Welcome everyone, it's Viking Actual here and welcome to the channel. This is our first video and I'm going to start us off with an ESO PvP build guide. There's going to be a lot more content like this, so please consider leaving a like and subscribing. If you want to see more, we do also have a Discord linked in our bio, so go check that out as well. This build I'm running with a base class of a Dragon Knight, and I then subclassed in Warden's Animal Companions, and I've also subclassed in Sorcerer's Stormcalling. I'm going to give you a quick idea of what kind of stats we're working with. So to start off with, we've got just over 15,000 max magicka, 31,000 health, and then nearly 26,000 stamina. It's quite a nice split of the resource pools, and then as you can see, our recoveries they're mediocre. They're not too high but not too low. I do find that with some of our abilities that this just gives me just enough that I'm not running out of resources and they're constantly ticking over quite nicely. As you can see, weapon damage does look good. It does go up. I'm currently running only a purple greatsword. Once that goes up to a gold, that will then be 4,200. If you're in your PvP zone, you then have to take into account that you could have an offensive scroll, or you could have continuous assault, which will then increase that for a further 10%. Spell critical looks quite low. You'll see later on we don't very much spec into critical damage from one of our mythics, so that's not something that we've really focused on. And then our penetration is obviously quite low. We currently are running a defending sword on the front because I'm waiting to get the perfected one. That will go up to about 6,000 base, and then we are carried by one of our ultimates in terms of penetration. We are using the Lady Mundus, so that boosts all of our resistances, both front and back bar, and then we have about 2,900 critical resistance. It is a heavily crit meta, so you need to have as much crit resistance as possible. We aren't running Rallying Cry on this build, so we need to get that crit resistance elsewhere. So we are running all in pen. All armor pieces are in pen. I'll give you a quick look over these stats. We do have some CP that reduces the cost of our break free and roll dodge and all of those core combat abilities. And as you can see from our critical damage, that will probably give you the hint that you need to work out what mythic we are using. On to our equipment. So we're starting off, we're using a Maelstrom's Greatsword. Obviously it's defending. You're going to make that sharpened ideally and hopefully have the perfected Maelstrom. And then your enchant I will be putting on an Oblivion enchant once I get the right one, so that it's dealing Oblivion damage. That goes through shields, that goes through block, that deals 4,875 damage to their health, regardless of their blocking, regardless of their shield. So really helpful to keep chipping away at them if they're one of those people that are really good at blocking or really good at keeping a shield on their uptime. The thing I like about this is every time I use one of my abilities, depending on how much weapon and spell damage I got, it will increase my damage done by direct damage attacks by 12%. That is a huge amount. That is more than your Essence Thief, that is more than your Major Berserk. So that is a huge increase. This build is all about raw damage increase. We want to be dealing as much raw damage as possible with 100% uptime. So we will have gold perfected Maelstrom Greatsword on the front bar with sharpened, and then the damage health enchant. We're running a back bar of an ice staff purely because of all the defensive traits that it comes with, reducing your block damage and increasing the amount of damage you can block. We're running it with physical damage and stamina, so it can keep giving us our stamina back, because our offensive abilities, most of our defensive abilities, rely heavily on stamina, and then it's got a defending trait there so that we can increase our resistances on the back bar. The ability, the set item itself increases our stamina quite significantly. It gives us a bit of weapon and spell damage to boost some of our heals on our back bar, and then the 5 set piece, it will restore 4,300 or over 4,300 health and over 4,300 stamina every 10 seconds, as well as increasing our damage done by 10 seconds by 10% for 10 seconds. So you instantly Maelstrom Greatsword, add this in, my main spam ball is instantly doing 22% more damage already. So that's huge increases, and this can have 100% uptime if you're managing to keep your eye on it, and can proc it every 10 seconds. So fantastic. We then have Helm of the Prior. Well, we have the set Prior. This is on all the time. This is both front bar, back bar. It is the bread and butter of defensive at the moment. As you can see, impen, all of my armour is impen, and they are all tri-stat glyphs. The Prior set increases the health by 1,206, and then increases armour by 1,487 twice. It's 5-piece, means that every time you decrease in health, your resistances increase. So as you go down in health, you become more tanky and harder to kill. It's really, really fantastic, and it pairs very nicely with some of the other passives to increase our survivability. So we have head in heavy, chest in heavy, and leg in heavy. These are the 3 ones you want to have in heavy if you are including heavy, because they offer the most increase in armour. We then have Prior Thetric shoulders. No particular reason other than I wanted a light one, a light armor piece, just so that I could benefit from the Undaunted passives, and it just increases my weapon and spell damage all the time. So that's a light, and you could put on anything. You could have a light Balog on there if you wanted, but 1-piece monster set that is light. I then have 3 mediums. This is just to increase the weapon and spell damage, as well as critical stamina recovery, all those different passives that you get from medium. So 3 medium, 1 light, 3 heavy. All in pen with tri-stat. Moving on to jewellery, I've got a Locket of Pariah infused with increased damage. So this boosts our weapon and spell damage all the time, 100% uptime. Unlike something like the Bloodthirsty, where it will increase it, but only once they've dropped below threshold. I want to get them to that threshold as fast as possible, because then I can invoke something like an Execute. So I will have this on there, just so that I've got that raw damage when they're 100% health, and as they're healing themselves, so I can get them to that point and then use my Execute. The Infused trait really helps with that, because it boosts the actual enchantment hugely. So I've got that on all of these. So both necklace and ring as a Pariah, and then I've went for Malakuf's Brand of Brutality, once again infused and with the weapon and enchant. As you've seen from my critical damage, it's in the minuses because we want to go raw damage. This is an increase of 16% damage done, but it will decrease my critical damage by 50%. When weighing up critical damage to raw damage increase, the thing you've got to think about is that raw damage is 100% uptime. It is every time you hit, that's the damage you're doing. As long as you've got all of your buffs and your procs up, that is 100% uptime. Every hit you do in that time frame is going to be hitting like that. So unless you're running something like Monomyth, and then you've got Mechanical Acuity on, and then for that certain amount of time you've got 100% uptime on crit, there's a lot more benefit to having increased damage done. So we've got 12% from Maelstrom Arena Greatsword, we've got 10% from Essence Thief, and now we've got a further 16% from this, which is 38% increase to all of our physical damage. It's huge, huge. I think, well, we'll get on to the overall of how much damage increase it is at the end. So that is all my armor pieces. So you've got 3 weapon damage enchants infused, and then all impen tri-stat. In terms of our skills, front bar, we are using Shattering Rocks. So this is where we're going to use our hard CC. We're going to immobilize, well, not immobilize, we're going to stun them, deal flame damage, and then once they break out of it, we then heal ourselves. So it's a nice burst heal as well as a stun, and deals a decent amount of damage. This is going to swap. I've got it at the moment because I'm trying to level up my Stormcalling because it's only on 34 at the moment. But once this is up, this will then be swapped over to the Execute. Let me quickly see if I can find it. So now I'm going to be putting on Executioner. So we've got all this raw damage. As soon as we get them below 50% health, or probably around about 25 to get the most out of this, I'm then going to be hitting this, and it's going to hit hard. You're looking at nearly 400% more damage, along with all the other buffs that we've got. It hits hard. Once they're down, they're not getting back up. So once I've leveled it up, that is going in the triangle slot. We then have Wrecking Blow. So we're on 36% with all increases so far. This gives you Major Berserk for 3 seconds. This is the spammable, so once again it's another 100% uptime. Increases damage done by 10% again. Boom, 46% increase. 100% uptime. It's fantastic. It is fantastic. As you can see, unbuffed completely, we're looking at a 12k tooltip already. Once I then proc Major Brutality, once I then proc all of these other things, it just skyrockets. I will show you a little bit later on, but it's fantastic. We then have Critical Rush. This is what we use to proc our Maelstrom Arena Greatsword. You have to have this on the bar to get that extra 12%. It's quite an unusual thing that I've included, but I can't pass up 12% damage done. So this is also a bit of a gap closer, and it's always a critical strike. It's not really a bonus to us because we've got such low critical damage. It procs 12% extra damage, and it's a gap closer, which means I don't have to use something like Streak. We then have Bird of Prey. Increases our movement speed by 30% with Major Expedition for 6 seconds, and grants us immunity to snares and immobilizations for 4. It means we don't have to use Ball of Lightning, so we don't have to use Streak for a gap closer. We don't have to use Ball of Lightning for immobilizations. And it also, while slotted, gives us Major Berserk increase in our damage done by another 5%. So there we are, we're sat on 51% increased damage. Fantastic. And then on the front bar we've got Dawnbreaker of Smiting. You know, just fantastic damage. 15,000 damage just off the bat, and then obviously an additional 18,000 over 6 seconds, and stuns them for 2 seconds. I don't use it all that often. It's kind of a cheap get out of jail free card, but because it's also part of the Fighters Guild, slotting it increases our weapon and spell damage by 3%, which in turn boosts our increased damage from Maelstrom Greatsword. So that is our front bar. So you've got your stun, execute, spammable, gap closer, mobility and buff, damage buff. On our back bar, remember me saying that we don't need much penetration? This is why. So this is corrosive armor. Oxidize the green blood in your veins, limiting incoming damage to 3% of your max health. So you will take no more than 3% max health, 3% damage for 12 seconds, and it deals over 1,000 poison damage to nearby enemies. While active, your direct damage attacks, which is what we've buffed by 52, I've forgotten now, 51, 52%, ignore all ignore all resistances. So you're hitting like a truck, and there's nothing they can do to mitigate it other than potentially block. Otherwise, you're hitting them for that. For 12 whole seconds. It melts. It melts people. We then have our burst heal. So we're using a scribe heal for this one. Heals for 10,000, but obviously once we've procced all of our weapon and spell damage, that goes up. It restores 600 magicka and stamina. The stamina just goes straight into the bank, basically, whereas the magicka almost refunds 600 cost, which means for a heal that heals that much, this only actually costs 3,800, which will be hard to find in any other skill trees. So really, really nice. It also gives Major Vitality, increasing our healing by 12% for 12% for 10 seconds. That not only boosts this, but that also will boost our vigor, which means that while we've got vigor up, we're just constantly healing, constantly replenishing ourselves. Next, this is a bit of a flex spot. We are obviously running Animal Companion, so you could, if you wanted, put in Deep Fissure. Really high burst. It's delayed as well, so you can quickly swap to your front bar to increase your weapon and damage, increase the damage of it, and it deals major and minor breach. I'm going with this at the moment because it is free. It really helps to sustain when you've got free abilities like this. And it also has a longer cooldown, so this is 30 seconds. So once you've applied it on there, although it's less than Deep Fissure, it's on there for a long amount of time. You don't have to think about reapplying it or waiting for the thing to burst again. It also afflicts them with burning, chill and concussion. If you've managed to get it on a Nightblade and then they go into stealth, they're going to get brought out of stealth every time this ticks. So it is also really nice when you're fighting those people that like to run away, go into stealth, because they'll keep popping out of stealth. You can kind of keep a track on where they're going. We then have Resolve in Vigor. It's a really cheap heal. It's basically stable of every PvP. You're not going to find it on not on anyone's PvP build. Heals you for 16,000 over 5 seconds, which is huge. And also grants you your minor resolve to boost those resistances. We then have another free ability. This is what I mean. The sustain on this is amazing. We've got 2 free abilities out of 10, and this one is also a sustain build, not sustain build, a sustainability. So you call a Netch, it restores 5,000 magicka stamina to you over 25 seconds. And while it's active, it grants you major brutality and sorcery, increasing your weapon and spell damage by 20%. And then every 5 seconds, it also provides a cleanse to remove negative effects from you. The second part of that, not very likely in PvP because you're getting hit with negative effects all the time. But if you find yourself in a situation where you've managed to dodge all your attacks, it'll also increase your damage done by another 5%. So you're looking at about 56% now. Give or take, 56, 57. And then our last one is Hurricane. This is our major resolve, so it increases our resistances by 6,000. It also provides minor expedition, so we've got major and minor expedition on this build. So major by 30%, minor by 15%, and that's active for the full duration of 20 seconds. So this one is mainly for those 2 buffs, but it deals an area of effect in damage around you. 1,700 damage every 2 seconds for 20 seconds. But as it increases in damage and size as the ability goes on, so you know you get a bit of free damage because realistically you're only doing it for the buffs. To show you our buffed stats, we've got, this is front bar, 36,149 and 35,423 resistances, so insane resistances. You're going to be over 5,000 spell and weapon damage once you've taken into account the gold greatsword, and obviously we'll be over 6,000 for penetration once we put sharpened on. So really solid stats that both are in survivability and damage done. I forgot to mention earlier, we are using the Lady Munda stone just to increase our resistances just that little bit extra as well. In terms of food, we're using Jewels of Mishral just to increase our health by 4,000, and I like to have those stamina recoveries. It means that I can save on some of the CPs to use them elsewhere. We've mentioned the lady. And then I am a vampire. At the moment I'm stage 1, but normally I'm running around in stage 3 to make the most of the undeath passives. So Pariah, as you lose your health, increases your resistances. This, as you decrease your health, you take 15% less damage. So those two pair really nicely. If you're getting zerged down or you're getting taken out, it becomes harder and harder. So you can kind of swap to your back bar, increase your resistances massively, and then, you know, proc your major vitality heal, and then just heal yourself back up, start again. So really nice. Mentioning our champion points, we have green CP is not really a massive one. That's going to be swapped out, and I'm probably going to go for a movement speed just so I can get around the map a bit faster. If you really wanted to be hiding in the shadows and make the most of the extra weapon and spell damage from Vampire, you could use this so you can move around and reduce the cost potentially, or the radius of detection, or reduce the cost. So if you want to play a sneaky brawler, you could put any of those three on, and then make the most of when you come out of sneak having an extra 300 weapon damage, not 300%. That'd be insane. We then have Gifted Rider. This one's a really important one. Breakfall. You're going to be falling out keeps. You're going to be knocked off keeps. It's going to happen. You want reduced damage so you don't insta die or fall so low that someone else can come along and pick you off nice and easily. This one's really nice to keep your food buffs up, and you're going to be using a lot of potions for your sustain, so a 10% chance not to consume it just keeps them going a little bit longer. Now on for blue CPs. We don't need any crit. No, we do need crit resistance. We don't have any crit damage on here because we're not using that. That's not what we're spec'd into. So we've got Deadly Aim to increase single target damage attacks by 6%. There's another 6% increased damage. We're then using Damage Done with direct attacks increased by 6%. Another 6%. So you're already at like 70 something increased damage. We've spec'd into physical damage again, because we want most of our spammables are physical damage, so like Wrecking Blow, that is a physical damage, so it just increases the damage of that further. And then we've went with Untamed Aggression, just so we've got that extra weapon and spell damage. It boosts our Maelstrom Greatsword, so we can get more out of it. And then we have one defensive, which is our Resilient, 660 crit resistance, because that's what you're going to need to survive against all these Nightblades running around in stealth. On to our red CP, we have Fortified to increase our armor again. We want to be quite tanky because there are a lot of high damage players out there, certainly a lot of glass cannons. We then have Pain's Refuge, once again reducing our damage taken for every negative effect. So it just means that if they absolutely slam us with status effects, we're just going to become more tanky, thank you very much. We then have Survival Instincts. This is less to do with our personal sustain, less, well, it is to our sustain, but less to do with our sustaining of abilities. So this will reduce core combat costs by 25%. So that's our roll dodge, that's our break free, that's all of those ones that are going to get us out of trouble fast. And then I've got a flex spot here of Celerity. Personally, I think I'm going to swap that to Vitality to get some extra health, because we've got the major and minor maneuverability. So these two may get swapped. To show you the skill tree, or skills once they're buffed up, that's on 1355. And that is without all of the other buffs. So that's no Essence Thief, that's no Maelstrom Arena. I've seen it go up to about 17,000. The other thing you've got to think about is in here, you've got an extra 5% physical. This is a physical ability, physical damage ability, so there's an extra 5% there. And 10%. To a player with 100% health, you're dealing 10% extra damage. So you're looking at least 80% increased damage if you're coming onto a player that's full health. That is huge. Every time they heal and go back up to the... Okay, you've just helped me by helping me increase my damage. So it really helps in getting them low, so then you can invoke Executioner. So that is basically the bread and butter of the build. It is a brawler, it is a proper Viking build, and I hope you've enjoyed. Please consider liking and subscribing, and I will catch you in the next one.